I am super excited for you to meet today Selena Rezvani. She is the author of the book Quick Confidence. What an incredible book for anybody who either struggles with confidence or knows someone who struggles with confidence, or maybe you're pretty good on your confidence, but every once in a while you feel like you're not quite there. I met Selena several years ago through our good friend, our mutual friend, Hal Adler. And I know I've been watching her career ever since. And when she put this book out, I knew that I wanted to have her on and it would be very beneficial for you. So I'm excited to introduce to you Selena Rezvani, the Mindful Leader. Selena Rezvani's mission is to teach people to be fierce self-advocates. She was named by Forbes the premier expert on standing up for yourself at work. She's the author of the Wall Street Journal bestseller, Quick Confidence, and also wrote Pushback and The Next Generation of Women Leaders. Selena addresses thousands of professionals each year and has been featured in TEDx. Be sure and go out and watch that TEDx talk. Harvard Business Review and the Today Show and NPR. Today, she's a columnist for NBC News, Know Your Value. Selena is based in Philly. We just talked about that, in great Philadelphia, where she lives with her husband, Jeff, and her 10-year-old boy-girl twins. Selena, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, David. I am really excited to be here and just really appreciate all you do to share, great interviews with us and help us level up our leadership.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You and I met a few years ago through Hal Adler, who's just an amazing human. I'm a fanboy of Hal. He's incredible. He was doing a workshop for people who were thinking about going out on their own and doing what I'm doing now. And I was going through that workshop and he had you as a featured speaker coming in and speaking to us. And I was just very impressed with you at that time. And I enjoyed that. And after that, I went and bought, I had several women on my staff working for me, and I bought both of your books, Pushback and The Next Generation of Women Leaders. I bought those books for all the ladies on my staff and gave them to them. I said, this lady is wonderful. You need to read these books, and gave them to all the ladies on my staff.
That means so much. Thank you so much for that. And I appreciate you. And like Hal, you're that giver in your world. And so I'm so glad we also met through Hal, who's been like a wonderful mentor to me. Truly one of those teachers who kind of like saw potential in you before you saw it in yourself. Right. So it's really cool that we have that connection.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Well, for everybody who doesn't know you, tell us a little bit about where you came from, how you got to where you are now.
Sure. So, like you said earlier, David, it's really my passion, what I want chiseled on my gravestone, is helping people be those more vocal self-advocates, to stop settling for suboptimal and to really ask for what you need and to be willing also to do that for others, right? To advocate for others. And so I've been able to reach people with that mission through books, as you just mentioned, 3 different books. My newest one, Quick Confidence, through training. So I work as a LinkedIn learning instructor and do virtual type training, but also going into organizations like Microsoft, Under Armour, the World Bank, to do really interactive trainings on how to stand up and speak up for yourself. Also, by the way, how to call out bias and extend confidence to other people. And then another way I like to work is through writing on some of these really important topics. I love geeking out on, the latest research on leadership and commenting and asking questions about how we could use this and make the workplace better. So I feel really lucky to be in my sweet spot and in this zone. And when I'm not doing that, I am a newbie weightlifter, which
wow.
at 5'2", not a lot of people guess that about you. But that has just been like a really cool and empowering interest, where I'm constantly humbled and constantly the learner.
Fun. That's super fun. I just, I thought of one other thing I wanted to ask you, so I'm putting a note in my notes here to ask you this at the appropriate time, so I don't forget. A little, just exposing the behind the scenes to everybody here. All right. Okay, so you wrote the book, Quick Confidence. Be authentic, boost connections, and make bold bets on yourself. Tell us why you wrote this book.
Well, I wrote the book because, personally speaking, a long time in my career, I felt like that very good job candidate, but the second or third choice one. And it wasn't so much because of competence as much as it was about confidence. And when I started to really seriously commit myself to learning to be a more confident person, it changed my life. And so a big part of my mission has expanded to helping other people do that, but the thing is, David, like, we don't all have a lifetime to do this, to reach this at, maybe only in our golden years. So one of my hopes and goals is to help people do that in small, everyday ways that really make an impact. And that's what Quick Confidence is all about. Small actions that build your confidence, whether in your mind, your mindset and beliefs, through your body language and your physicality, some of the ways that communicates with your brain, or in your interactions with other people. So really cool to get to write this on all three of those levels to help people, because I don't know if you found this reading the book, but in some cases, it's easier for us to do one of those. It feels more natural than maybe another.
Yeah. It's interesting. And, I've worked in learning and development for a long time. And in that work and in this podcast, some of the discussions we have, I hear feedback. Sometimes people say, well, that's very theoretical, what you're talking about. I need something practical. Mm-hmm. As I was reading this book, I kept thinking, if you want practical, buckle up, baby, because this is just power packed with practicality. And so if people are wondering, well, I need some practical information on gaining confidence, this is the book right here. It is practicality from cover to cover. And so I think they're not going to be disappointed in this podcast of something practical to talk about. What we're going to do is we're going to go through chapter by chapter, and we're just, I was a little overwhelmed thinking about preparing for this particular interview, because in a lot of the interviews, I can kind of set people up on the chapters and we kind of talk a little bit about it. I honestly feel overwhelmed because we are not going to be able to even remotely scratch the surface of what is in this book. So we're going to try to give people a taste, but they're going to have to buy the book if they want even a tenth of what is. This podcast is not going to remotely cover what's in the book. So you're going to have to buy the book, people, because we're not going to barely touch any of this. But let's get started. Are you ready, Selena?
Yeah, I love that
All right.
idea too, David. Like my real hope was that this would be dog-eared and Post-its in it and notes and like a reference you could come back to. So I'm
For
all
sure.
about giving people a yummy taste today so they know
Yeah.
what they're in store for.
Yeah, they're going to have to buy the book to get it all for sure. Okay. Your first chapter is make strong first impressions. Give us just a word on that.
Yeah, for a lot of us, we feel a little socially rustier. I know I do. Since the pandemic, that isolation really did take a toll. That mandated kind of keep to yourself. And it's had some real effects, I think, on how comfortable we feel initiating contact with other people. And I'm literally talking about like saying hello and smiling, not even trying to make a new friend, right? Or approaching somebody because you have a particular need. I'm simply talking about kind of breaking the seal between two human beings. And yet, this is such an important part of our confidence, our ability to make that strong first impression. So one of the tips I really love to share with people is called dog code.
I love it.
And I have a big, fluffy 125-pound Newfoundland dog, and she's very good at this. But what I often tell people with this little simple tip is when you go to somebody's house and they have a dog, what does that dog normally do when you open the door and walk in? What do you think?
Well, so I just dog sat for a friend who's in Europe, and every time I would leave the house and come home, that dog would lose his ever-loving mind, and he just runs up to the door, and and his tail's just going back and forth, and he just went absolute bonkers every time I would come home.
Yeah, right. They're committing hard to that greeting, aren't they? And,
Yeah.
It's like on the flip side, what are they not doing? A dog is not sitting in the corner talking it over with their friend beforehand. They're not overthinking it to death and saying,
they're not acting like a cat.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
And they're not going, I do want to see that person, but I'll just kind of hang here and see if they come up to me. Right? They don't do that. They are very much willing to be the first. And there's something awesome I think we can take from that and borrow from that when we're not feeling particularly confident, right? Who among us hasn't felt like that? So just by getting in the habit of initiating contact, oh, there's David. I see he just walked in. I'm going to go up and say hello. It sidesteps that overthinking landmine, which we can fall into and have an awfully hard time getting out of. And, I think it does something else wonderful, which is, sometimes people say, yeah, but what do I do after that? And I like to say, you don't have to worry too much about what happens after that. Maybe there's a great authentic connection there, and it's very easy for you and I to throw the ball back and forth with each other conversationally. Maybe it's not. Maybe you're like, we maybe lost a little bit of our connection, and that's okay. That's okay. You lose nothing, by going up and initiating contact with that person. So if you can, try to make it the standard to do that when you see somebody and it changes not only how you see yourself, but certainly how other people see you. They'll remember it and appreciate it.
Right. I love that. Another tip in this chapter is about making memorable virtual first impressions. How do we do that?
Yeah, I love this point because I just was coaching a client about this. She was telling me she had a really important virtual meeting, wanted to make a point to make a good first impression. And I told her one of the tips you can use is to make a point to be an early speaker, even if it's during the kind of hello, small talk part of the virtual session. People are just logging on. Sometimes when we hang back, we wait and we wait and we wait, and now it's 17 minutes into the conversation. It can feel very scary, like we're diving off the high dive to suddenly break into the conversation. Whereas if we say something early moments, hey, David, good to see you. Hope you had a nice vacation last week. It tells our brain, speaking again is NBD, no big deal.
Right.
It's no big deal. I already kind of broke the ice and I can speak again. So a little thing, make your voice heard early doesn't have to be some intellectual point you're making. Yeah. It can simply be like greetings, rapport, announcing yourself. Hey, everyone, it's Selena joining from Philadelphia. It's really a question of speaking. There are some people like introverts, for example, or individuals who really have a high bar for sharing their contributions. They want to make sure it's really vetted or researched or well-baked, who might hang back in conversations. That just might be their default style and sometimes find it hard to interject. And so I like to challenge those people. One way to build your confidence is, if you can, to make 3 interjections. Maybe one is that early contribution you're making where it's about breaking the ice and connecting just as human beings. But the other 2, even if you're not a deep subject matter expert, might be a question you're asking the group.
Right.
That adds value, by the way. Even, if you're, again, not the biggest expert, the most tenured person, the most experienced. I want to ask the group to just pause a minute while I ask, how does this impact our larger plan launching this product right now? That's helpful a lot of times to bring perspective to the conversation. So asking a question, creating a bridge from somebody else's comment. David, I think you're really on to something with that point. What if we applied that to this other area? So if you can get in the practice of getting out there, it doesn't mean they're all pitches, proposals, ideas you're making, but can you add value with that question, with that point? If the quick answer is yes, do it, go for it.
Yeah, that's really good. Don't you think it's also good? And I know there are a lot of people these days who don't like to do this, but in virtual meetings, to have your camera on if you're trying to make a good virtual impression.
Yeah, I'm a believer in, the freedom at times to be able to say, team, this is going to be a camera optional meeting. Maybe that is a freedom you build into some of your meetings. Sure. And maybe you even let people know there's a little signifier on your recurring Friday meeting that this one is cameras optional. But look, if part of your hope is to be more visible, to be more memorable, to be known for something, it sure helps for people to put a face. When I talk about advocating for yourself or negotiating, one of the main rules is, if you can avoid it, don't do this over email. Don't do this where you have no cues to go by. And I think we deny ourselves other people's cues, their physical cues, their body language when their camera's off or we turn ours off. And yet that's a really important source of information in interactions. So when there's something especially important on the line, I would make a point to keep that video on. Maybe you're negotiating for advancement. You're pitching that you be the leader of the committee, whatever it may be. Those are important points to make your full connection.
Yeah. Well said. All right. The next chapter is called Create Belonging Wherever You Go. I love this.
I think we all have our own search for belonging. And often in inclusion type workshops, this is a question I'm asking people. Think of a time you didn't belong.
I love that question because it's so universal. Yeah.
It really is. It really is. And I think it points to the fact that while people's experiences might be very varied, some people might feel like day in and day out, I'm dealing with microaggressions and feeling diminished, like I don't belong. Someone else's belonging story may be rooted in their childhood, something that was really hard for them in their family life. But I think there is a universalness to that experience of feeling other, feeling different in this unwelcome way. And I think there are some great ways we can affirm ourselves when that belonging or lack of belonging monster comes up. And of course, ways we can extend that to other people and be conscious of, really inviting everyone in, little acts and invitations of saying, come on in. And so there have been plenty of times in my own career, being 5'2", tan skin, female, being, youthful when I started out in management consulting and feeling the opposite in every way of the people I was giving advice to.
Right.
The leadership teams I was working with, and noticing how that kind of seeped into my actions, like how it got internalized. And I don't wish that on anyone. It doesn't feel good. Nobody wins when you water yourself down or you conform or you don't share your best ideas, right? They don't get anything memorable from you, and you don't have the satisfaction of bringing your true self, to work. So, one of the simple ways I bolstered myself was with a mantra in those situations where I felt like I didn't belong. Another example of this, just quickly, is going into like a speaker's lounge and meeting other speakers early in my speaking career who I really admired. And for whatever reason, they're just being a very icy reception, not what I was expecting. And it really triggered in me this like, I think that's evidence they're the big dogs and I'm maybe don't belong here. Kind of preyed on my own worst fears, I think, my own imposter thoughts. And I had to say to myself in that moment, actually, I belong here. I 400% belong here.
Yeah.
And it's something I need to coach my clients on sometimes, who are feeling that way. Yeah, but they're the expert. Yeah, but they're more experienced than me. Yeah, but they're an intimidating SVP. Yeah, but you're needed in this room.
Right.
What if you behaved like you belong, like you are a needed asset to this conversation? So that mantra, that repeated mantra, is something I really encourage people to find. And if your, pain point is different than mine was in that example, maybe you're someone who's very afraid to make a mistake. Maybe your mantra speaks directly to that. I find mantras work better when it's not some general platitude, just an all-encompassing, like, I am peace. What I find works best for my clients is something that really speaks to their insecurity. If it is around mistakes, it might be, if I take a wrong step, I can right myself. That sometimes we fear the mistakes so badly, we forget, wait a minute, I've problem solved lots of curveballs before, issues, problems, troubleshooted things successfully. So think about what that insecurity is for you, would be my advice, and really ask yourself what would speak to that in a short soundbite, something you could repeat to yourself.
Yeah, that's so good. One of the tidbits you have in this chapter is advocating for overlooked coworkers. I love that. I think that's so good.
Yeah, it makes me really sad when I think about, David, how many times I have given workshops and talked to people who've come up and said, like, I do feel overlooked, or I feel downright diminished. One woman I'll never forget told me, I am the director of marketing. I feel really proud of my experience. And the other day I was introduced to our client as our slide girl, like the one that makes the slides pretty.
Yeah, right.
And like,
She's the
ouch.
director of marketing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
like,
girl.
ouch. And I cannot tell you, though, how many iterations of that I've heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's maybe said in jest or like to be playful. I get that. But there are so many ways that happens. I think when we see that happen to somebody, or in another flavor, maybe they're not even introduced to the client, right? They're kind of invisible. Or we're quick to see people on the team shoot their ideas down. Maybe they come from a department that historically, like, our department doesn't like, so let's just shoot down what they say. Those are moments we can act. We can confidently step forward and say something like, well, let's hear this idea out.
Right.
Let's hear what Jane has to say. I'd like to get the full picture. Right. That little move is enough to stop the momentum from making that person feel overlooked, unimportant, like they don't matter. Sometimes making a point to give somebody an excellent intro. And you know what? I'll totally admit that sometimes that takes a little more work on our part. Maybe a junior person has joined our team. And we know this is kind of a hierarchical environment. So people may not look to them with a lot of kind of, you're credible. We might say something like, hey, all, I'm excited to introduce Deirdre. She actually comes with experience running 5 end-to-end projects just like this one. And I'm excited about the experience she brings. Like, bolstering that person, making a point to bolster them and kind of raise awareness, because a lot of times we don't know somebody's resume backward and forward. So I think there's so many little things, sometimes one-time things we can do that really do make a difference. Speaking well of their experience is one of them. Yeah,
so good. The next chapter is Rebalance Power Dynamics. And I love this. I actually just wrote a newsletter. I have a weekly email newsletter, and I just wrote one on power dynamics, and it got a huge response. It really hit a chord with people. So I know this is an important topic. Talk about this.
I love this topic so much. And, I think part of it is just myself being a recovering good girl, I call it, sometimes the things we need to lead are at odds with some of the things we learn, the cues we get growing up, like don't make waves, take just enough. Kind of, I remember getting messages about like not taking risks, like don't bet the whole farm, be careful. Right. These are sometimes at odds with things we need to lead, like making tough decisions, asking for what we need, making a daring proposal, sometimes even things that go up against being liked, at all times as the first goal or priority. So, I think there's a number of things we can do with power dynamics. But one of the ones I want to talk about is if you're feeling intimidated. You may work with, I don't know, let's say executives who you find yourself behaving a little differently around, or maybe even like sales prospects. And one of the things I share with people is if you put somebody up on a pedestal, don't be surprised if they start to look down on you.
I love that quote. That is so good. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's true. true. There is a way to honor someone's experience, position, without making yourself small.
Mhm.
And I'm a big fan of reminding people of that idea. So one of the things you can do is make a point to interact with the person, not the power.
Yeah.
So Kristen, who's probably a friend and maybe a sister or a mom or a, colleague, not just Kristen, the CMO of a Fortune 50 company, right? With all the titles and like bluster that comes with that. So kind of making that person human, connecting with them on a human being level can change how you interact with that intimidating figure. I even encourage an exercise I really love called Just Like Me.
Mhm.
Reminding yourself, this person has probably woken up and hit snooze and begged for 10 more minutes of sleep, just like me.
Yeah.
This person this morning was maybe like multitasking while they got their kid breakfast and read up on the news, just like me.
Yeah.
This person has wanted to make a good first impression.
Mhm.
He's needed to summon courage, just like me. It kind of reminds you some of those human commonalities and can right size some of your fear.
Right. I always like to think everybody has to brush their teeth.
Yeah.
You just picture people brushing their teeth. I think that's kind of a humorous thing.
Yeah. Yes. And something else I've been thinking about lately, it kind of relates to that, is we always see people's like beautiful, amazing bios, right? With all those wonderful highlights.
Accomplishments. Yeah.
Yeah. And the best things that have most likely happened to them professionally. What we don't see is that whole breadcrumb trail of fails.
Right.
They may be the SVP of the coolest company on the planet, but what's not on there is that they got rejected from 2 jobs before that and didn't make the final cut. They got to do this TEDx talk. They were not accepted and heard crickets from 4 other TEDx talks. We don't hear that. And so sometimes we have to remind ourselves that that's what's behind the glamorous front image.
So good. All right. Selena, one of the things we like to do on this show to get to know people better is learn about the music they like. So we're going to take a little musical pause here.
Fun.
So tell us about the music that Selena loves. Maybe some of the artists, maybe the songs, concerts, whatever. Tell us about the music that you like.
Sure. So I grew up in a household that has a pretty interesting multicultural mix. And so that's what I think of with music. My dad is from Pakistan and my mom's Ukrainian. And yet I grew up in the Philly suburbs. So you put that all together. And
some Philly soul in there in the mix.
Yeah, exactly. We had like quite the record player going of music, but it was really like loved. So everything from like Pakistani love songs on vinyl that my dad was playing to like my mom's taste that were more like Cat Stevens and things like that.
Love Cat Stevens. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that really started for me, music and love of music being a mixed bag, which is what it is today. So a quick taste of that, I guess. One musician I especially love is Kamasi Washington. Oh my goodness. I don't even know how to describe the feeling, but he has like an incredible jazz take on Claire de Lune that like could bring you to tears. It's so beautiful, like gorgeous. And so I hope one day to see him in person would be just like thrilling. And then another one that I really love is a German rock group called Milky Chance. And
I've heard them.
Yeah. And they had an album I love called Sad Necessary. And they were my like pump up song. A song
Right.
called Running was my pump up song right before walking into my TEDx. So I had that on right before like one of the most scary moments, and I like appreciate them for that so much, because that song like put me in a great state of mind.
That's awesome. Fun. Do you have like an all-time favorite song? Or is Running maybe it?
I know. I think it is Running. It's
Okay.
almost hyper, which I don't know what that says about
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
but it makes me happy and it makes
Yeah.
me feel so energized. So I think that's probably it.
Yeah. Okay. That's great.
How
Well,
about
I love
you,
it.
David? I want to know what yours is.
My favorite song. My
Or
favorite
one.
song is, yeah, my all-time favorite song is Given to Fly by Pearl Jam. That
Oh,
song is just so good. It's I don't know if they intend it to be this way, but that song is definitely a retelling of well, I had it in my brain a second ago. Allegory of the Cave by
oh,
Plato.
cool.
And it's kind of a modern retelling of that. And I love Allegory of the Cave. I love Pearl Jam. It's an amazing song. Everything
Yeah.
about it is
Okay.
just
I'm
it's
putting
so
it on
powerful.
my Spotify list to go check out. And were you
Yeah.
a kid of grunge? Were you like, did you?
I'm a little older than that, but I actually fought against Pearl Jam for a long time. I had some friends who like begged me to listen to Pearl Jam for years, and I wouldn't do it. And finally, they just made me like a CD of a bunch of Pearl Jam songs, and I just put it in reluctantly, and I was instantly hooked. I was like,
Oh,
how did
yeah.
I fight against this? These guys are amazing, and I've seen them live several times. They put on the best concerts. They've never done two concerts the same. They change their set list dramatically every night, and they've never done two shows the same. They
That
are
is
an
so cool.
amazing,
That's the
yeah,
best kind of fan, to
yeah,
turn somebody from a resistor. That's really cool.
yeah. They're in my top 5 bands now for sure. Yeah. So anyway,
Awesome.
fun. All right, let's get back to the book. Your next chapter is Release Overdoing, Overthinking, and Over-Explaining.
What a confidence zapper,
Yeah.
right? When we overdo and come from a place of kind of thoughtlessly filling space, or, just doing for the sake of the idea that, if one thing done is good, then 7 things done must be great. Not always true.
Right.
So just if we take over explaining for a minute, one of the things that's helped some of my readers and clients, I know it's helped me. If you're an over explainer, if you find yourself essentially going on a long ramble when what you meant to say was maybe like a sentence or two, is to start thinking of all the extra words, not just as surplus or as more explanation, but as clutter. When you start to see it as clutter, that's actually making it harder for people to comprehend you and your main points. That mindset shift can change, how much you add. So rather than seeing it as, I need to clarify, I need to elaborate, I need to say more, what I try to share with people is it's okay to leave a little intrigue. It's okay to leave pockets and spaces. In fact, I encourage you to, let people say, hey, David, can I stop you there? I want to know more about the last thing you said, right? You're almost encouraging more of that exchange when you leave those openings, when you share the short summary, and let people dig for the more that they need, rather than, I need to give the most exhaustive answer of all time. It's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. And it's actually one of the points I make in the book that sometimes happens when people are giving their intro, to other people. It's like, why does this universally make us cringe when someone's like, unexpectedly, let's do a round of intros? It's not because we don't know what we do. I know for most people, they could sit at a cafe and talk improvisationally about what they do for like at least half an hour. So it's not that, it's that somehow we put so much pressure that we need to convey it all.
Right.
And I think sometimes that takes us to this place of rambling, an excessively long answer. Yeah. Hey, what do you do? You know, and like 5 minutes later, you both emerge from the response like maybe more uncertain than ever. So I think keeping it simple, keeping it human speak,
right?
You know, not jargon and business speak or industry lingo, but almost like the way we might explain what we do, the way we might explain it to like a smart 8th grader, right? In this universal, understandable way. Because, you know, sometimes inadvertently, that initial door we're trying to open, you know, actually we end up putting up a wall. You know, I know sometimes people feel that way when you say, what do you do? And it's all in industry speak. And I don't maybe speak that. I don't understand software engineering. So I definitely don't understand your niche in software engineering, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So
I'll tell everybody that Selena practices what she preaches, because when she sent me her bio, it was the shortest bio I've ever received from anybody. So she definitely practices this. Oh, we're running out of time so fast. Okay. Negotiate your success. This is so important. In fact, one of your tips in here is like my favorite tip in the whole book, and it's don't tell yourself no before they do. But this is such a great chapter, so powerful.
Oh, I'm so glad that resonates with you, and me too. It kind of gives me shivers when I hear that in the best possible way, because don't we do this to ourselves? You know, and it's funny. I'm writing a newsletter piece for my confidence newsletter right now called "It's Time to Ask Why Not You." Mm-hmm. You know, and it's amazing how sometimes we will say as a default to ourselves, well, David's so experienced, or do that exciting stretch thing. I think I need another degree to do that, or I think I need 3 more years of experience. She's born to do that, but me, I'm not so sure, right? And sometimes we overemphasize what everybody else can do, and or I should say, overestimate what everyone else can do, and we underestimate what we can do. So I want to ask you, when it comes to that dream, you know, to all of our listeners, that dream you have, whatever that is for you, maybe it's a stretch. Why not you?
Yeah.
Why not you? Because you've got to believe somewhere in there that you can get up and do it as well as anybody else. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what's going to help you reach that stretch goal and convince someone else that, you know, you should give me this chance to write a book, or you should endorse me as the next VP of our group, or I hope you will take my candidacy seriously as the president of our association. Right? You've got to believe it before you can expect anybody else to get behind it. Right. So confidence doesn't have to be loud. You can have that you know, assertive belief that you have value to add. Yeah. But I encourage you to like really be conversant, learn how to become fluent talking about that value. And I promise, if you're somebody who this feels yucky to, it's going to get easier. It's going to get a lot easier to talk about what you do and why you feel it brings, you know, unique value to a client or an organization.
Right. Your next chapter is harness high stakes moments. This is so good.
Yeah, this is something we all have, isn't it? We have interviews that mean a lot, a sixth round interview where now you're meeting with the entire leadership team and they want you to give a presentation, or you finally got your dream opportunity to represent your company at a conference. And this feels like the big leagues. There are actions in those moments that can support us, to do our best work and really rise to the occasion. And on the flip side, there are these inhibitors, there are like anchors we can drop in the moment that just keep us in place, don't propel us forward. And I know I've lived through both sides of that, like kind of the don't do and one of the things you should do. And I think one simple thing, it's a little bit less glamorous, but when it comes to a high stakes moment, there's this saying in distance running, when you're running your first races, like your mentors will often say to you, respect the distance.
Good.
Yeah, like meaning don't show up to that 10 miler, maybe having trained for 2 miles.
Right.
Respect the distance and respect the task in front of you. And I think if we do that, often we're respecting the audience we're speaking to, And so while it might have worked well to cram in college for some of us and pull an all-nighter, I think you actually raise your confidence when you can take some enjoyment in the process and the buildup, when you give yourself some runway to really immerse yourself, to feel truly prepared. Again, it's not the most like glamorous hack, yet it makes a difference. We sit up a little straighter. We speak with more conviction when we know our stuff, so you have to ask yourself, if you're not willing to prepare, like how important is this thing to you?
Right. I totally agree that preparation is like the secret sauce, and it separates the people who make it from the people who don't. It's taking that time. And I love the word respect. Like you're respecting the process, you're respecting the event, you're respecting the audience, you're respecting all of that by putting in the time to prepare. I love what you said there. So good.
Yeah. And I'm really glad as a slow runner, I finished a lot of races in that last pack, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference when you bring some humility, I think, to that process.
We've got just a little bit of time left and 3 more chapters. Let's hit them good here.
Okay. Lightning round.
Let's speed round. The next one, this is so powerful, and everybody deals with this. It's overcoming toxic people and cultures. I know this is a big one for people to deal with.
Oh, so much. So many people write to me about this on social media, and the amount of suffering in the workplace is really a reality. I mean, it just is an undeniable thing. And I think when there is a person in a toxic role, often their entire family gets the toxicity of that role, is living through it with them. Yeah. It's like they're employed there too.
Right.
They're living with this person who's like walking in sometimes like a zombie, and it affects and colors even, your entire family situation. And so I think it's important that we give, the full due to what a toxic job can cause, like the ripple effects, the cascade in a person's life, not to mention their self-esteem. Okay, I'm doing the job of 2 people. I'm like too exhausted and too down to even look for another job. There's so many people feeling that feeling, to even have the energy to strategize for the next thing. And so I talk about one of the don't do's here it can be so easy to say, well, let me just match that energy.
Mhm.
I'm in a place that's kind of hyper competitive, lots of backstabbing and putting people down. Like, why should I act any different? And, I'd actually argue it can make us feel worse, to embrace that ick factor and take it on and mirror it and amplify it and do more of it. And so this is a really good time. Like, what a great exercise to be in touch with your own values and what matters to you. So resisting that urge to kind of match the energy you're seeing and making a point to really think about some of the feel goods you need, the supports you need to get through the everyday, because these are not, unless you leave, and even then, these are not often quick fixes. Often a toxic place was like that before you got there and is going to be after you leave.
Right. Right. Great advice. Okay. Rise above fails and setbacks. In the previous chapter, we were talking about harnessing high stakes moments. And sometimes even with the best preparation, it still doesn't go the way we expected. So sometimes we have the failures and the setbacks. How do we rise above that?
Oh, I think my life has been like one long bead after bead on a necklace of these. And I'm a big believer in trying to find a way, if you experience a fail or a faceplant, to have the last word, to see if there's a way to author a new ending. And so an example of what I mean by that, I pitched a book before Quick Confidence, my newest book, and I was very excited about it. I got a lot of interest, and then I ultimately got 12 no's. And just gut punch. It just was like, that's not how the story was supposed to end here, know? And in the end, I realized this is not the only thing I dream of writing about. There's an idea kind of 25 degrees different, not shockingly different and new, but different enough. And I'd like somebody to listen to that. And I went back to one publisher who said no. And I said, I feel there's a really viable, different idea. And just like that, they said yes.
Yeah.
And, Quick Confidence was born. I know that does not always work out that way for people. But if you got rejected from a job, see what happens if you stay in touch with that recruiter or hiring manager who you felt a connection with, you thought you had hit it off with. In one case, this helped a woman doing this exact thing to actually be considered for a different job, one that ended up suiting her better. So she was rejected from the first, but kept in touch, and they found a place for her. Adapting a proposal, like my book example, pursuing a particular company or person who you're eager to meet with. I know it didn't work out last time and we weren't able to find a time and a place. I was wondering if, in the next 2 months, you'd have the opportunity to meet. One of the shocking things for me about interviewing dozens of C-level leaders over the course of my career is this realization that many of them said, I got to where I am because I am more tenacious than most.
Right.
When I got a no, I wasn't afraid to go back 3 more times and say, how about now? How about under these slightly different conditions? How about with this feedback incorporated, with this different timing? So please take a note from that. Sometimes no is not the damning conclusion we think it is.
Right. Yeah. Selena, that happened with me on this podcast show. There was a guest that I wanted to have, and they told me no last season. but I just really wanted them. And I came back and asked them again, and they said yes this season. So I won't say who it is. Everyone will have to guess, but it's one of the guests who's on this season. And they had told me no last season, and they told me yes this season. So
That's amazing.
you just
I
have
love
to
that.
keep going. Okay. The last chapter of this book is my favorite chapter of the book. It's every single point in this chapter, every tidbit is gold. The chapter is Scale Your Confidence.
Yeah. Scaling your confidence and knowing, you are going to be learning in front of an audience, and that's okay. You are going to be consistently putting yourself in new situations, stretching the edge of your comfort zone. And there are going to be times where you have to remind yourself, nobody has the manual for this. Everybody is just winging it.
Right.
And I think most important, I hope you'll spread confidence like confetti, that you will remind somebody else about their potential. Somebody did this for me and it changed my life. I was in business school getting an MBA, and we had a chance to direct some of our own research. And I knew just what I wanted to do. I wanted to interview, big deal C-level women leaders and understand how they navigated their way to success. The only problem, David, was that I did not know a single one of these women, and I had no connections to them at all. And so I pitched the proposal anyway to my, professor, and my one female professor at business school, Lindsay Thompson. She said, "Selena, I'll approve your proposal to research this on one condition." She said, "You have to go after the giants. You have to go after the women you think will say no, won't even entertain like an email from you, let alone an interview." And I was like, what? Really? And thank goodness she did that, because I did pursue those interviews, and they changed my life. They opened my eyes about leadership. I realized other people could learn from this, and that became a book, which became a business, which became a mission in my life. And my hope, my prompt, my challenge would be, how can you be a Lindsay for somebody in your world who you could look at their goals and hopes and plan and say, that's a nice dream. Now think bigger.
I love that message so much. And it's so important that we instill that confidence in other people, because people have done it for us. I think it's such a powerful message. I love it. Selena Rezvani, you are fantastic, and I deeply appreciate the time that you've given to us. The book is Quick Confidence. Get it wherever you get great books, because this is a fantastic one. Be sure to reach out to Selena. She does keynotes, workshops, training, all of those wonderful things, and you will not be disappointed. You can go to her website, selenarezvani.com. You can reach out to her on LinkedIn, social media, all of those wonderful places. She has a great newsletter that you will enjoy. You have like 100,000 people, something like that, on your newsletter. It's not a small thing. So
yeah. Thank you so much, David. It was an absolute joy to talk to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you. I am so thankful to Selena Rezvani for joining us today, and I'm sure you enjoyed that discussion. Be sure to pick up her book, Quick Confidence, Be Authentic, Boost Connections, and Make Bold Bets on Yourself. There's so much in it that we weren't able to get to in that discussion, but I know you'll be helped by. We're going to do a meditation in just a moment. Before we do, I'd like to ask you, if you get something out of this podcast, if maybe this is the first episode you've listened to, or maybe you've listened to many, if it's helpful to you, please do me a favor. Go out wherever you listen to the podcast, whatever platform, and rate it and review it. Rate it and then leave a comment. That is very helpful for people as we let them know about the Mindful Leader podcast, and so they can know what you think about it and that people are enjoying it. You can also go to our website at pendulumcoaching.com. When you're there, you can look around and find things out about me and our coaching and workshops. You can also sign up for our newsletter. We have a weekly email newsletter, and it's really short, but people really enjoy it. I get lots of great feedback on that. So if that's something you would enjoy, you can sign up for that at the website as well. You can also invite me to come speak for your event, your organization, or help coach. I'd love to help you in any way I can. Let's prepare ourselves for this meditation. As always, if you are driving, please be safe and careful. If you are sitting in a chair like I am, it's great to just have your feet on the ground, just being grounded. I like to place my hands in my lap, my back up against the back of the chair. And if you're comfortable, you can close your eyes. However you're sitting is fine. If you're laying down or in a recliner, wherever you are, it's fine. Just be comfortable and relaxed and mindful as we think together. I always like to take a few breaths to transition into this time. Let's inhale together and exhale and inhale and exhale. And one more time, inhale and exhale. You can just continue to breathe normally. One of the things Selena talked about was belonging. Now, sometimes we feel like we belong, other times we don't feel like we belong. Let's take a moment right now and reflect, recall a time when you felt like you didn't belong. Maybe it was in your childhood or high school or college days. Maybe it was early on in your work experience. Or maybe you feel that way on a regular basis. Just think of a time or situation where you felt like you didn't belong, and think about what it was and how that felt. Now think about a situation, maybe that's coming up soon, or maybe just a scenario that you're in fairly regularly, where you might feel challenged on your sense of belonging. Maybe you don't feel you're quite good enough, or you're not equipped as the rest of the group, or maybe you just feel anxiety in public settings. Just think of a situation that's coming, or one that you can think of a situation you could be in where you feel like you don't belong. And now talk to yourself about a new thought process. Talk to yourself about how you do belong here. You belong in that situation. You're there for a reason. You are valuable as a human. You're valuable as an employee. You're valuable as a subject matter expert. Talk to yourself as you would a friend and explain why you do belong in that situation. Remember that anytime you're feeling unworthy or unqualified, that you can talk to yourself in this same way and remind yourself why you are there and why you belong and why you can bring value to that situation. It's something we always have within us that we can talk to ourselves in that positive way. Now think about not only do you belong there, but what behaviors can you bring to that situation that gives a sense of belonging? How might you stand or dress or approach the situation, speak, interact? What can you do to let others in that situation realize you belong just by your presence? Think about those behavioral things that you can do in that situation. One of the things Selena talked about was how many people feel like they don't belong. And sometimes they are treated as if they don't belong. Think about how you can stand up for others when you notice maybe they're being overlooked, neglected, possibly even ridiculed or marginalized. What can you do to help others feel like they belong in places you are, in situations you are in? Think about how you can help others feel more like they belong. Let's take a few breaths of transition. Let's inhale and exhale and inhale and exhale. And one more time, inhale and exhale. As you are comfortable, you can open your eyes. I want to thank you so much for joining us today on the Mindful Leader podcast. Be sure to pick up Selena Rezvani's book, Quick Confidence. I know it will be a great help to you. And be sure to contact her if you need someone to speak on that topic of confidence. She would be a great resource for you. Be sure to tell all of your friends about us, that you enjoy the Mindful Leader podcast, and we will see you next time on The Mindful Leader.